Magic the Gathering is one of the biggest and longest running trading card games in all of existence, and it's kept its position at the top for good reason. It's an incredibly rich and tactical experience that promotes creativity, wild and interesting player interactions, and allows players to express themselves and how they like to play games through its breadth and depth of different ways to play the same old card game. The only problem is, Magic is older than, well, me, and with that incredibly long history comes a lot of baggage. There are more cards in existence than any one person could feasibly keep in their head, pages and pages of lore to keep track of for those interested in its story, and most importantly, a lot of mechanics that have grown a little bit clunky and difficult to grasp for new players in their age. It's also been around long enough that there's a massive amount of assumed knowledge and competitiveness that the game thrusts upon its players, regardless of the experience that they're looking for. If you're a new player jumping into a standard game of Magic on, say, Arena or at your local game store, you might hit a bit of a wall where you feel the crushing weight of competitiveness sucking out the fun of the game. A lot of players will take one game of being landlocked too many and just give up on what can be an extremely time-consuming, brain-consuming, and expensive hobby. But what if there was a way to play Magic the Gathering that was explicitly designed to keep the game a fun, approachable, and social experience? What if instead of grinding against your, 17th Rakdos Rush deck on the Arena ladder, you could be having a fun and chill time casting big city spells and getting into petty squabbles over where someone should swing their 7/7 with Trample? Well, that is where Commander comes in. Now, a lot of you will likely already be familiar with Commander. To be honest, it is the most popular way to play the game in paper form. But if, like me, your first experience of Magic was through the very popular free-to-play online version of Arena, then Commander might have missed you by. Don't let it. This is, in my opinion, the absolute best way to play Magic the Gathering. So, in Commander, originally known as EDH, which stands for Elder Dragon Highlander, don't worry, we'll get to that in a minute, players construct an exactly 100 card deck of Magic the Gathering cards from throughout the game's history. But, as the name suggests, there's one card that takes precedence over all the others in the deck, which is your Commander. Originally, your Commander could only be one of the 5 original Elder Dragons, Nicol Bolas being the most notable, as their presence has been front and centre in a lot of sets since. That's where that Elder Dragon part of EDH comes from. They were the first ever multicoloured creatures printed by Wizards. Nowadays though, a Commander can be any of the many legendary creatures that have been printed in the hundreds of sets released over Magic's storied 30-year history. As long as it says legendary creature under the art, or if it's a planeswalker that states it can be played as a commander, like this, then they can be your leader. Commanders are special for 2 reasons. 1, you don't have to draw them from your massive 100 card deck to play them. They sit in the command zone, which is an imaginary area off the board where they can be summoned at will for their cost. If they die or get exiled, you can choose to whack them back into the command zone instead, so that you can continue to cast them again and again, albeit with a slightly higher cost each time you do so. Reason number 2, your Commander denotes the cards that you're able to place in your deck, as every card in it must match the colour identity of your Commander. So this Xanathar Guild Kingpin card here from the original D&D set can have any cards and lands in its deck that are either blue or black, or a combination of the two. It can under no circumstance have any green, white or red cards. Sorry, Italians. It's not just the colour identity of your Commander that matters though. Any mana symbols that appear on the rules text of the card, or even on the flip side of a 2-sided creature, will count towards the colours they can play. Jegantha the Wellspring here is a red-green creature, but because of its tap ability at the bottom of the rules text, it can actually field cards from any colour in its deck. Blex the Vexing Pest might look like a mono-green commander or card, but because he's double-sided and has a black sorcery on his flip side, he can actually only lead or be part of a black-green deck. That restriction goes both ways though. If I wanted to have Jegantha in my red-green commander deck, I wouldn't be able to because of those white, black and blue symbols that appear under its tap ability. And Blex wouldn't be able to go in a mono-green deck because he's also a black sorcery. But once you've got all your favourite sorceries, creatures, lands and artifacts out and you're ready to start building, there's one more restriction you'll need to take into account. Commander is a singleton format, which means you cannot have more than one of each card in your hand unless it's a basic land, or it has a special rule allowing you to have multiple written on the card. Commander is designed to be played with a group of 4 people, each running different decks. You'll have a whopping 40 health each to start, and the last player standing takes home the win. As you can probably guess, hitting 0 health will knock you out of the game, but to add an alternate win condition, you can also lose the game if you take 21 or more damage from the same commander. A good way of taking down any pesky lifelink decks that have gotten themselves to scary high life totals, or an incentive to build your deck around your commander as your main attacker. And that is literally all the changes from Standard Magic. There's a very small list of banned cards, but outside of that, any card that has ever been printed since the first ever Magic set is up for grabs. It's designed for 4 players, but you can play with any number your heart desires. And then the rules are exactly the same as any other multiplayer game of Magic the Gathering. So, with such a subtle difference between this and Standard Magic, why am I waxing lyrical about it? What is it about this game format that's got me so hooked? Well, first things first, your commander is worthy of its eponymous epithet. Much like the companion mechanic we've seen rear its head in previous sets, having a single legendary creature always available to you is an incredibly powerful thing. No matter how many times your commander gets destroyed, exiled, or bounced back to your hand, as long as you have the mana to spend for them, you can get them on the battlefield again. That means instead of building a collection of cards that hopefully complement each other as best as possible, you end up building a vast library of stuff that synergizes with this one card. No matter what cards you draw each game, you'll always have your commander available to start building your combos around. If you have a favourite legendary creature from your years of playing Magic, especially one that gets exiled every time you put it on the board in a standard game, you can finally have them be the star of the show. Your commander is the identity of your deck. It could hint at the tribe you're hoping to play, power the engine you want to build, or enable you to use your favourite mechanic in the game. Are you a big fan of treasure? Then find a commander that utilizes them. Love angel creatures? Build a tribal deck with a big scary angel creature as your commander. The possibilities are endless. But also, well, they're not endless, are they? Because your favorite commander creature is also going to limit the possibilities of what you can put into your deck with its color identity. For example, I really love making token spam decks, and all the cool cards in New Capenna that flooded the board with citizens were a great fit for one of my favorite creatures, Mondrak, the big horrible mouth from Phyrexia or Will Be One. But if I make Mondrak my commander, I can only use white cards in the entirety of my deck. So I have a choice. Do I put Mondrak in the 99 cards and hope he comes up in play at some point? Or do I make him my commander and miss out on all of those amazing token spamming cards from green, red, blue, and black? The singleton nature of the game and the massive deck size also means that you're not going to be able to reliably get your strongest cards out on the board either. You can't just have 4 copies of the same card in a 60 card deck and be pretty much guaranteed to draw them eventually. In fact, you can very easily go through an entire game without your favorite card ever appearing, which will definitely make you think, should I just make them my commander? A lot of deck building in MTG can feel like maths homework, checking your mana curve, finding the ideal number of lands, figuring out what percentage of your deck should be taken up by the same game-winning creature. Deck building in Commander feels a lot more like you've got a special clubhouse with strict membership policies, and you're trying to fit all your favorite cards in at once. And there's room for more than you think. You've got to get 100 cards in there somehow, so you can't afford to be too picky either. Limitation breeds creativity, and you will make some really wacky and interesting decks before you know it if you're building for Commander often. Something about that big showpiece creature that leads your force just brings out the expressive side of deck building too. I found myself less interested in whether or not a card I'm adding to a deck is ruthlessly synergistic with everything else in there, and more considered with how thematic it is. The Fall of Atraxa might be a useful card, for example, but it's literally depicting my commander dying, so I don't want to put it in my deck. And that's just the deck building, which, whilst fun, is still only half of Magic the Gathering. What Commander really excels at is improving the state of play as well. When you go to the official Commander site, which notably is upheld not by Wizards, but by a rules committee outside of the company, you'll notice that the very first link on the page leads to the format's philosophy. And those 4 words emboldened at the top of the page Commander is for fun. This is not a game about ruthless efficiency and competitive play. To quote them, it's a socially interactive multiplayer Magic the Gathering format full of wild interactions and epic plays, specifically designed as an alternative to tournament Magic. As is fitting for a Commander in which you choose an avatar to lead your forces into battle, Commander focuses on a resonant experience. Each game is a journey the players share, relying on a social contract in which each player is considerate of the experiences of everyone involved. This promotes player interaction, inter-game variance, a variety of playstyles, and a positive communal atmosphere. At the end of an ideal Commander game, someone will have won, but all participants will have had the opportunity to express themselves through their deck building and gameplay. And what a lovely sentiment. I mean, I honestly couldn't have put it by myself. This was such a load off my back, going from sweaty competitive matches on Arena, being griefed by blue-black control decks who like to spam the passive-aggressive emotes to try and make you rage quit out the game, to going to a format that specializes in fun, silly, emergent interactions that come from the humans playing Magic, and not just a competitive deck list that someone has spent hundreds of pounds recreating. One of the most fun parts of Commander is the politicking that goes on around the table. If you don't hit me with that creature, I won't use my board wipe. We need to team up against this guy because he's getting too strong. Let's form a fragile allegiance as the two weakest players. It's what you expect from board games over trading card games, and it's the kind of interaction that the game is built to foster. You'll see it from the official Commander cards that will be released by Wizards as well. Cards that let people vote on what happens, cards that shake up the base rules to introduce chaos on the table, and even new types of legendary creatures that let you combine two cards to make your Commander, either as two partners or as a D&D hero with a background. I can't even begin to express how much more interesting Magic games are when the players aren't focused on how quickly their decks can win the game, but instead on how much fun they are to play, how much silliness they can introduce to the game, or how much they can express their identity with them. There's an additional benefit that you get from the small rules tweaks that the game makes as well. By aiming for 4-player games and bumping up the health totals to 40, games typically run a lot longer than your average game of Magic. This helps to give players space to get their board state built up over a longer period of time at the start of the game, setting up their engine, getting lands on the board, like rooting through their decks for key spells. There's less pressure in the early stages to do something game-changing in every turn. This is a format where you'll see a lot more utility artifacts get played, a lot more ramping happening across the board, and cards that might not be super useful in standard format due to their really high cost or specificity being given a new lease of life in Commander. The extended time and added player count also tends to give players who are falling behind a bit more breathing room. Most good-hearted players who understand the philosophy of the game don't want to be responsible for blasting someone for a ton of damage when they're flailing for cards and undefended, knocking them out of the game. There's a general understanding of spreading out the aggression and letting those that are landlocked or top decking re-establish themselves rather than bullying them and kicking them whilst they're down like you might be forced to do in a competitive one-on-one game. That's not to say that Commander can't be competitive if you want it to be though. CEDH, or competitive EDH, is a variant for those looking for that high-level tournament-like play, but with the fun deck-building restrictions of Commander still at the base of the game. There's a general rule 0 that's unwritten but generally understood amongst players that you should begin the game ensuring everyone around the table is looking to get the same experience out of the game or play with decks of similar power levels. If you want to bring your most terrifying, infinite combo-filled, salt-harvesting deck, then you're perfectly allowed to. There's nothing in the rules that stops you, but you're supposed to communicate that with your competitors. Make sure that you're not going to be, blasting them out of the water because they've all brought silly and thematic decks to the table that just aren't going to compete on the same level at all. It's kind of like a session 0 for an RPG. Everyone gets on the same page and you make sure that the game you're all about to play is, the most fun version of that game that you can play. Because no matter how good you are at Magic, playing a one-sided game with no real challenge isn't entertaining for anyone involved. Another one of my favourite things about Commander is what a great base it is for designing game variants in and of itself. People have been inventing their own versions of playing Magic the Gathering since the card game started, EDH included, but the thematic, multiplayer, low-stakes nature of Commander allows for a really great shared atmosphere for introducing new ways to mix up the game. Plane Chase adds some randomness and big game-changing effects via big showpiece cards that affect every player and have people around the table rolling a die to see what happens next. Oathbreaker has players take charge of powerful Planeswalker cards with their own signature spell that lets you put instants and sorceries in the command zone. There's Pauper variants that restrict you to only using common cards, a hidden role game, games that involve everyone playing one of the 5 colors as a mono deck and trying to defeat their philosophical enemies to win. It's a hugely varied and versatile format that crams so much replay value into an already terrific game. So look, I've talked about how incredible this game is and why you should play, so how do you get started, right? Building a 100 card deck around a legendary creature, let's be honest, sounds hard and expensive. Well, there's a few ways you can jump in without too much investment of cost and without too much investment of time. The question is how much you're willing to buy in. First things first, if you have friends that play Commander and they are nice people, then I am sure one of them will lend you a deck at their next game. Most people that really love the format have multiple decks that they play with, myself included, so if you just want to get playing right away and you've got a group that are already in the hobby, well then that's your best bet to start out and test the waters. If you're looking to play at like a local game store with randoms or maybe online, then you'll probably need your own deck unless a kind stranger can lend you one at the next local Commander night. To get started, pre-built Commander decks are pretty available. New ones come out with each set of varying quality. I picked up this Kazla the Broken Halo set from the new March of the Machine release, and it's really fun. There's lots of cool interactions in it, its construction is good, and I'd happily recommend it. Some can feel like a bit of a dud though. I've heard that this Tinker Time one is maybe just not that amazing, so it's best to do your research online and see what people are saying about them. If you don't mind buying a fixer-upper, grabbing one of the unpopular ones from previous sets and making your own changes, that could be a good way of saving money if you're savvy with deck building and you know what a deck needs to make it play more smoothly. But if you are good at deck building, then that's where the best option comes in. Buy singles. Make a deck online from scratch and you'll have complete control over the cost, the theme, the variants of the cards you use. You can splash out on a foil variant for one of your favorites, maybe your commander, and you can find cheap battered versions of cards that you want in your deck that you don't care about quite as much as the others. There are loads of websites that help you with deck building, from online building tools to websites like EDH Rec that specifically shows you the cards that most people tie in with your favorite commanders. You can search by card, by color, by what mechanics you want to build around, or what tribal deck you want to build. There's loads of resources on YouTube for making cheap and cheerful but effective decks. There's top 10 lists, build guides, or even just playthroughs of someone using your favorite commander that you can watch to see what they tend to build around and get the most use out of during their game. Pre-constructed decks usually retail around release at like 40 quid, and if you're happy to do your research and find less popular versions of the cards you're after, you can easily build a complete deck from scratch for far cheaper than that. The nature of a singleton deck also means that you don't have to buy 4 copies of a very expensive card because you physically can't have more than 1 copy anyway. When you're buying all your cards from local game stores and not rummaging through booster packs or precons, you're also not shoveling money into a massive corporation like Wizards of the Coast and supporting a local environment and making it good to play. Plus, you don't have to stick with one deck for the rest of your life. You can merge things into other stuff and eventually you'll build a collection of stuff that you can just build off of. If you want to just try the format and dip your toes in without spending a single penny, but you don't have a group of players near you, you can also try Brawl on MTG Arena, which is basically one-on-one Commander with 25 health, either with standard rotation cards or historic like you'd normally play Commander with. You can build decks on there, try out what you like best, and play some games before you've spent any actual money. If conversely you're happy to buy decks, or maybe even have some at home you want to play with, but there's no one around to play, there are online ways of playing. Recently I've been using Spell Table, which only requires a webcam and a microphone to play paper Magic with people online by casting your table to them, and chatting over mic. There's a built-in tool that can recognize cards on people's tables so you can read them easier, and the site keeps track of all your health, commander damage, poison, etc. so you don't have to do it yourself. It's free, it's online, it's run by wizards themselves, so there's usually a fair amount of people playing whenever I log in. It's good. Give it a go. No matter how you start playing though, or where you do it, the message is clear. If you love Magic but you haven't tried Commander, then get playing Commander. It's an absurd amount of fun and has completely reframed my relationship with the game. There's a reason it's the most popular format for all players, and I implore you to give it a try if you haven't already. People love this thing for a good reason, myself included, and we'd love you to join us. If you've enjoyed this and you want more Magic coverage from us, we've recently played a variant of Commander called Arch Enemy, where everyone plays against one super powerful opponent. I led the forces of Elesh Norn in their multiplayer invasion for March of the Machine. A link to that is right next to me now. You can also find a link to dicebreaker.com, where we have all the latest news on Magic and guides for how to play. Before you go though, hit subscribe, give us a like, and let us know your favourite commander in the comments. But most importantly, I will see you on the next video, and until then, have a lovely day.